Carol, let me just start by asking you a very broad question, which is, if I'm a company, or for that matter, an investor, and those are or a consultant, those are probably the three categories of people we have in the room today. How do we think about sustainability, and how do we avoid pigeonholing it? How do we avoid putting it off to the side?
Well, there are a series of things that I think all of us would agree with that if we weren't talking about sustainability, we would say we're really good business practices. One of those is that we would really pay attention to what makes a company or a business within a company very distinctive. How it is it positions itself in the market, and it makes a difference so that people can understand it. They find that it's what they want to buy, whether it's a B2B or whether it's a B2C. And so we would build our strategies, our plans, our engagement with employees off of that distinctive business strategy. But what I see when people go to sustainability is much the opposite. People immediately borrow best practices. They start finding out what everyone else is doing, and they make a list of those and in some ways create checklists, which in many, many cases does away with the distinctiveness of the organization. So let me give you an example of what it would mean if you really kept those linked, because I think it's really the source of innovation. DuPont Corporation, when it stepped back and really looked under Chad Holliday's leadership, who wrote the foreword to my book and tells a few stories for himself in the book, just went back and said, what is really the distinctiveness? What's the essence of DuPont? And they said, it's really about managing a particular set of risks, those that are where the interface of chemicals are created that interface with life. And they said, okay, well, if that's our distinctiveness, we should be working on anything we're doing to improve the ecological system, earth, community, society, building from that, not building from a separate set of segmented ideas about what someone has listed as the best practices. As a result, a series of things have happened, everything from really changing how they work with the automobile industries, even selling off the fibers business because it was not as distinctive for them, and changing how it was that they did mining. All of those had byproducts of really, well, not byproducts, integrated products of creating a healthier planet, but they came from innovation that came through the distinctiveness of the business.
So are you saying that if sustainability has its own department and its own report, that it kind of becomes yet another corporate function, and it should be core to the business? Is this a question of sort of getting the CEO to buy in?
Well, I think it's a lot more than that. I'm known to say, and I will say it with then some explanation, that if most of the functional departments went away, I think all businesses would be better. So sustainability departments, human resource departments, I think what they've done is separated out something that is innate to everyday decisions by everybody in the business to running it. And if they aren't part of what they care about, not just are mandated to follow, but they care about, then it gets lost. What I've seen with, and I don't know all of you, so I apologize if I don't. If I offend someone, but I believe that most sustainability functions, corporate responsibility functions, do the work for the business, which means that the people who are making the decisions daily are allowing someone else to have it be their work while they continue what they consider their mainstream work. So reintegrating it. So if I were in charge of a CSR departments, I would convert them all into education components, where what they're doing is building the capability. I think the same thing would be true of human resources, where you're rebuilding the capability in people who make decisions every day to understand how that is a part of their work, not just of leaders and managers, but also operating people.
So I see some people in this room who are, in fact, in charge of sustainability at their companies. How do they go about putting themselves out of business, in a sense?
I've never actually liked that phrase because it implies that there is work stops and doesn't need to be done. What I would say is revolutionize the role, because that's where the real creativity comes from anyway. How about if you redefine completely yourself as the university of sustainability? In fact, Mark will probably eventually ask me this question. I don't actually like the word sustainability because it really means to maintain something or get it back to where it is, rather than really create some sense of life in something. And so I would have all of those departments and functions consider themselves what is really building the capability deeply into the organization.
Well, that leads to another question, which is so much of the business conversation today around energy and climate is focused on efficiency, doing less bad. We're going to, make tons of product, but we're going to use less energy. We're going to use a little bit fewer materials. We're going to return less waste to the landfill. Is there a way to rethink that around actually doing some good rather than doing less bad? And can you think of any examples of companies that might be wrestling with that issue in a meaningful way?
Yes, and I don't even think doing good is the right word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and language matters.
Language matters because it frames how we think about things. It pulls into mind particular pictures. So, for example, how many of you in here have children? Okay, how many of you were children? All right, so this story should help you understand how it is that I think we have to reframe it. If I said to you, with your children, how is it you do less harm to them every day? Could you beat your wife a little less every day, or your partner every day? Versus I said, what is the uniqueness and distinctiveness of your child, and what really brings life into them so they contribute and they make a difference? I think that's the flip in mindset, and it's huge to make that kind of shift in how it is that we work on ecological and social systems. How is it we think about not just doing less harm to Earth, but how is it that we come to understand how Earth works? Like, for example, some other language we have to get rid of to do that is a watershed as a name is something that is very anthropomorphic. It's human version, our water. And some people call them food sheds. What if we called them life sheds? That's what the systems do that are really working on understanding how a life shed works. And when a business spends time looking at every life shed it affects and how it is it can make it healthier, what is distinctive about that life shed? So we did that with the DuPont system in Australia and really changed completely how it was they were mining for TiO2 because they started to build roads in a way that they actually improved the ability of the life shed to do its work. So those kinds of things happen from making something healthier, making it good. The reason I don't like that word is that becomes very human also. Good for who, right? So what you really want is the sense of how life works and how it gets improved.
And this all sounds to me lovely, as if I'm talking to someone from Sierra Club or Environmental Defense, but you've spent your entire career in the business world. Give us a concrete example, if you can, of where there's business case for this kind of more systemic, integrated thinking.
All right, so let me give you an example out of Colgate-Palmolive, South Africa. The 2 years before the elections, and I do this one because it's so impactful, not because it's the most recent one. In South Africa, Stelios Sessos, who was a leader and the general manager for Africa, was sent there to really decide whether or not they could keep open the facilities. You can imagine there were risk questions. It was very concerning. And so Stelios went in and had long conversations with folks. He had to do everything from meet the mandate of the Constitution, which was that management had to reflect the percentage of the population racially. That meant 95% of managers in Colgate needed to be black, and they were currently white. That is a huge shift. And everyone was saying things like, yeah, but they haven't been in school for years, are they going to be smart enough? And Stelios said it was very quick to understand that what you found was that because you weren't educated didn't have anything to do with lack of intelligence. What he did is implemented a process whereby everyone in the business became responsible for how it was that they improved and built a country while they built a company. And in that process, what they did is first they rebuilt economic development in the townships using Colgate products, building distribution channels by people who lived in the communities. They worked with dentists so they could track the health, and they improved the growth of revenues by 30% a quarter. Now, most business would love to have that kind of return, right? And initially, what Colgate in New York here, I think thought that Stelios was still continuing to close down that business, and, it was just good they were getting a good return on it at the end. But when he brought to New York with him Isaac Michiel, who was a detergent tower operator, who's the one that instituted one of the major programs to improve health in the community by using Colgate toothpaste and dentists to educate people on how oral health worked, tracking it and discovering they were improving by double digits every year the health of children, while they were getting this 30% per quarter return, we didn't have any arguments about closing it down anymore.
Still exists?
Still exists, still doing well. It was the only system that did not have a strike during that entire time. So there was another big return.
I hate to say it, we're running out of time, but one other really, I think, valuable insight in the book is, you don't probably use the term, but there's a lot of talk in the sustainability world about the importance of employee engagement. Talk a little bit about that as a driver of the kinds of changes that you want to see in business.
I think the thing we all want when we take on any new challenge is for it to actually work, for it to actually make a difference. And I noticed you were asking the question a lot, is the cap and trade program you're doing, are these making a difference? I don't know of any program that makes a difference unless it's in the heart and soul of everybody every day who's making a decision. It can't happen with a department or even an executive making it happen. I think getting rid of the term employ is a good one. You may notice I talk a lot about language, but employ is like employing somebody to do something, as opposed to, I think they're part of the co-creative process. Everything from the earth, they're part of the system, as Andrew says. If what you do is you ask everyone in the business to become connected to, and you make it possible through self-organizing mechanisms, longer conversation we should have, then you ask each of them to make what we call a promise beyond ableness. In South Africa, Isaac Michiel had no idea as a detergent tower operator how it was that he would improve the health of children, but he lived in Soweto Township. He and every person from R&D to marketing made a promise to do something in the market for consumers who had real lives that would really improve them, and then he deeply, deeply cared. It was his commitment. He had to go fight for the money to do it. He had to produce the earnings margins and cash flow justification for it. I mean, it's a fairly complicated process, but he drove to do it so that in 6 months he accomplished what most people had been trying to do through NGOs and a variety of other routes for years, decades. So I think that when it becomes embedded in and people are asked to know the essence of the business, what are the imperatives that it is that they're working on in the community on Earth, and they're given capability. The other thing is building capability for people to think with critical thinking skills and have the personal and character development, which is critical to it, to carry it out. So that it's not an abstract function of something that needs to get done on a checklist. It's something deeply is cared about, and it's connected to the market, and everybody, every day, in every decision is making it happen.
So you're really talking about connecting everyone at the company to the fundamental purpose of the business, understanding the customer, the purpose, the business, the numbers.
Right, and what I talk about in here is you have to start with customer. That is the person who decides whether you stay in business, and you have to improve the quality of their life and the capability of them to live their life, as well as Earth employees. So yes, everybody becomes a business person.
I wish we had more time. I want to commend the book to all of you. Carol, thanks for coming all the way from Seattle, where you're based for this event. And let me turn it over now back to Andrew. Please join me in thanking